My name is Beatriz Ríos. I am an EU reporter and broadcast journalist based in Brussels, where I cover EU affairs. I know what Interreg is because for 2 years I work as an EU regional reporter. I was working for Euractiv, which is an organization based in Brussels that is specialized on EU affairs. What I find interesting about Interreg projects as well is that they follow a bottom-up approach, which I think is something that is very much missing when it comes to covering EU affairs. So it's interesting to look into not the whole project, but how that project is helping concrete people in the field and how that can be a story in itself. So it's not necessarily about how the project in itself is working or how the funds are working, but about how people are benefiting from that. And also considering that this is several countries working together across border, and understand that that strengthens the relationship between different populations in a common area. Interreg was very much active as well in Northern Ireland, and that contributed very much to the peace process. And I think those stories are not so well known because they are not in the spotlight from Brussels. I think the elements of a good journalistic story are that it has to be engaging, it has to be informative, and it has to connect with people. And I think it also has to identify issues that might be relatable for as many people as possible. Try to think as a journalist. This is not a report that you're sending to an institution to justify your project. What you're trying to do is catch their attention. So think about what makes your project interesting, special, different from the rest, and try to catch the attention of the journalist. Think about it as a story, not as a project. And instead of going through like, we have achieved this and that, say like how this project has helped this community, or how we have managed to change that, or how we have contributed to this. And that way you will already catch the attention. And maybe if you want to talk about the funding and you want to talk about the technical details of the project, put that at the end. One of the ways that I go by is that I try to identify projects that are going on in the areas that I'm interested in, or in the themes that I am interested in. And the way I do that is by checking the projects available in the website that the Commission has put forward, which is Cohesion, and that I understand actually takes the information from the KEEP database. What leads me to choose one story over the other changes every time. It really depends on what is the current news. I have to admit that I always say that journalists are honest but not objective. So the way we perceive the world influences the way that we pick the stories that we decide to cover. But I think that whoever works on an Interreg project should move the shift maybe from trying to reach out to Brussels-based journalists who are really busy and wouldn't have the time or the resources to cover those stories, and maybe turn to those who are based in those countries and that might have an interest on what's going on. I think what piques the interest of media when reporting on the EU are crises, which is not necessarily the most important thing, but it's definitely what gets the attention of people. I think that what we have learned on Brexit, but also on the many elections that we have been following over the past few years, is that people are disconnected from Europe, that sometimes they don't feel as represented as they should. And we need to find a way to connect what's happening in Brussels with what happens in the daily lives of the millions of Europeans that belong to the European Union. Something that it might be very simple, but it's super important for journalists, is being able to reach out to the person in charge of the project. So if you can make a phone available or an email account that actually gets to someone that is involved in the project, that's ideal. First of all, focus on the success story of your project. Try to highlight what is it that you have achieved and make it into a story. Think about it in a way that it can connect with people. Don't think so much about the journalist, but about the audience you want to reach. Second, I would say that focus on the theme that is about your project, not so much on the project in itself, and try to identify what kind of media can be interesting in that kind of theme. And third, move away from Brussels correspondence. Try to focus on national, regional and local media, but try to highlight as well the European angle, the European spirit within your project so that it can reach out to more people. There is another way in which I think people who are working in comms in an Interreg project could reach out to an European audience, and I think that's by going through the European-based media. So those media who are covering the EU in a wide sense, which are maybe Politico or Euractiv. Those media, they do have specialized people who are following regional policy, who are following funds, and they are very much interested in what's happening with that money in the actual field. And they also sometimes have different kinds of paid content that they could even rely on. So they could decide to pay the media so that they report on the stories that they would like to pass through. I do believe that some media are able to influence policymakers. First of all, obviously, there are media that have a lot of power even within the union. I am thinking about the Financial Times, Bloomberg, I'm thinking even about Politico, because they're very well established. They have a lot of links with policymakers as well, so the information that they report does have an impact on the way that the decision-making process takes place in Brussels. In a way, it can be by setting the agenda. I think another way is catching the attention of policymakers, such as members of the European Parliament. You report on a story that is linked to your project that might be relevant, and it might be a way to catch their attention so that they bring it into the European debate.